Thank you. Good morning, Lighthouse Vineyard. Good to be back with you again, women. Jeremy, you've only begun to realize how complicated it gets, right? Can I say stuff like that? I don't know. I don't know if I can. The Battle of the Bulge, talking World War II here, was fought from December of 1944 to January of 1945. Just about a month, very short amount of time. But it was Nazi Germany's final major offensive on the Western Front. It was launched in the dense Ardennes forest, which is located in Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. And it was Hitler's last-ditch effort to split the Allied forces and to try to shut down their supply lines in the Allied drive towards Berlin. At first, the Nazi offensive worked. The Germans punched this massive dent, this bulge in the Allied lines, and that gave the battle its name, the Battle of the Bulge. And though the Allied forces ultimately prevailed, the cost was very steep. There were over 105,000 casualties in about a 1-month time frame. And it severely slowed down the Allied push into Germany. I actually had an uncle who fought in the Battle of the Bulge. I didn't say this first service, so I'm going to give a little story. I had extra time, like about a 15-minute extra time, so I figured I got time for a half-hour story, right? Yeah. So my uncle, it was such an atrocious battle, my uncle would never, ever talk about being in the Battle of the Bulge. But this uncle had like figurines and statues or whatever of wolves all over his house. So one day my dad was over there and said, "Hey, what's this all about?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you the story, but you're not going to believe me." So in the Battle of the Bulge, he's in a foxhole and he's freezing to death. You can see all the snow. If historians, you can correct me, but I think that more soldiers died on both sides of the line because they froze to death than they actually got shot. Does that sound right? It was just brutally, fatally cold. And my uncle said, "I'm in a foxhole. I'm there by myself. I'm freezing to death. I'm not going to survive the night." He said, and a wild wolf came to the side of the foxhole, jumped down in the foxhole, said, laid down next to me, kept me warm all night. In the morning, he said, I woke up, the wolf woke up and wandered out. He said, I survived the Battle of the Bulge because of a wild wolf. That's the story he told. So anyway, that's a freebie. You guys got that. First service didn't. So woohoo for second service. But it was a really costly victory for the Allied forces. The initial German success, listen to this, it was not about superiority. It was about surprise. Despite having intelligence that the Germans were going to launch an attack here in the Ardennes forest, the Allied leaders dismissed the intel. They believed it was an unlikely possibility. And so the result was the Battle of the Bulge was very costly. And it was costly because the enemy had gotten in the good guys' heads. The Allies weren't overpowered on the battlefield so much as they'd been outmaneuvered in their brains. And that's exactly what the Bible tells us about the invisible war as we continue in part 2 of a message series on spiritual warfare. Our enemies, your enemy's strategy to take you out, to defeat you, is to outmaneuver you in your head. See, the primary battleground of the Christian life is right between your ears. All right, and that's on your fill-in-the-blank notes if you're trying to follow along. The primary battleground of the Christian life is right between our ears. And 2 Corinthians 10, verses 3 through 5 makes this clear. For though we live as human beings, we do not wage war. We don't fight according to human standards, the way humans fight. For the weapons of our warfare are not human weapons, but weapons that are made powerful by God for tearing down strongholds. Strongholds? What are we talking about? We tear down arguments. Say arguments. and every arrogant obstacle that's raised up against the knowledge, say knowledge of God, and we take every thought, say thought. We take thoughts captive to make them obey Christ. And so what are the strongholds that we're called to tear down, to battle against? It's not people, all right? It's not even the devil himself. They're thoughts. They are arguments that have been weaponized to oppose God knowledge. All right? There are thoughts that we need to confront. There are thoughts that we need to subdue, and after subduing them, brought into submitted alliance with Christ. And so the battleground of the Christian life is something like the old saying, I have seen the enemy, and the enemy is between my ears. Right? Yeah, it didn't work in first service either. I think if I ever preach this again, I just have to strike that sentence. Right? Yeah. Okay. My niece said so that's the way it is. All right, so here's the good news. Unlike the Allied commanders at the Battle of the Bulge, Scripture tells us that we don't need to get outmaneuvered in our brains. 2 Corinthians 10:11 tells us this. So be alert so that Satan will not outsmart you. All right, so he won't outmaneuver you. But listen to this. For we are familiar with his evil schemes. Well, how is it that we're familiar with the devil's evil schemes? Well, here's the answer. We already know where he's going to attack, right? The ground zero is right between your ears, all right? And we also know how. We know the where and the how. And we know how because in John 8:44, Jesus tells us that our enemy has not changed his game plan since day one. And that's your second fill-in-the-blank note there. The enemy has not changed his game plan since day one. Picking up in verse 44, the devil was a murderer from the beginning, from the get-go. He has always hated the truth because there's no truth in him. And when he lies, it's consistent with his nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. And so since day one, the enemy's evil strategy to take you out has been this: lies. It's the only move he has because there is no truth in him. All right? But listen to this. His game plan is subtle. His game plan is to get you into your head, to get you thinking about things in a way that isn't the way things are. Does that make sense? To get you thinking in a way that isn't the way things are. And so this morning what I want to do is have us analyze the enemy's very first offensive against the human race, and we see that in the Garden of Eden. Because the devil's strategy, original strategy there, is his same strategy here today, right between our ears. And so if we familiarize ourselves with his game plan there, it's more likely we're going to recognize it when he tries to pull it on us today. Okay, now I have to explain something here before we read our text, that I have this kind of bizarre notion in my head that the devil speaks with a North Carolina accent. Are you from North Carolina? Are you from what? Who else? You're from North Carolina? Okay. Who else is from North Carolina? All right. Okay, so I'm off the hook because it's not just my wife who sounds like the devil. No, I mean has a North Carolina accent. So I am so sorry, but there's a good reason why I think the devil speaks with a North Carolina accent. See, it's not my wife. It's my uncle. It's a different uncle. I used to have an uncle who was from North Carolina, and he spoke with this silky, smooth accent. And if he would have lilted out the words, hey, what do you say we go rob a bank? I would have said, yes, let's do that. But if somebody else had said to me, that would be a bad idea, but it's like the way you say it, I want to do that. Yes, that's a great idea. And so I think the devil talks with the North Carolina accent. And so with that in mind, I'm going to read the passage and apologize in advance that I have a terrible Southern accent. Somebody actually gave me feedback when I tried doing the devil accent one time. They're like, Kent, you are nowhere in the South. You're not in Texas. You're not in Alabama or Mississippi or Kentucky or West Virginia. I don't know what you're trying to do, but forgive me. You forgive me already in advance? Yeah, some of you are like, I don't know, let's hear it first. All right. So Genesis 3:1. So the serpent was the shrewdest of all the wild animals the Lord had made. And one day he asked the woman, Did God really say you must not eat the fruit from any of the trees in the garden? Is it that bad? Would you like to play the devil? Yeah. Yeah, you would like to play the devil. That's not a soundbite you want on your TikTok page. Did he really say? Verse 2, well, of course we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden. It's only the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden that we're not allowed to eat. God said, you must not eat it or even touch it, because if you do, you will die. Now, we'll see, that's not really what God said, but the devil picks up on it, and he's like, oh, bless your little heart, sugar. Bless your little heart, you won't die. God knows that your eyes will be opened, and as soon as you eat it, and you will be like God. Sweetheart, that's not a bad idea. That's a good idea. Right? Yeah. That's how it works. That's how it works. And it did work. The woman was convinced. And where was she convinced? Right between her ears. She saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her, so she took some of the fruit and she ate it, and then she gave it to her husband. Here, try this. Try it. It's good. I don't know why I looked at my wife when I said that. I guess I just wanted to sleep on the couch tonight. All right. Then she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. And so we see here in the enemy's initial offensive against the human race, what we've already observed, the human brain is the target. And that's exactly where the enemy still attacks today. And how then? That's the where. How does the enemy attack? He's got two familiar schemes. The first lie the enemy tries to get in our heads is subtle doubt. Subtle doubt. We mentioned this briefly last week. And we see this in its very first run in Genesis 3:1. The devil just asks a simple, subtle question. Did God really say? Did God really say? So notice that the devil doesn't take this head-on approach, spewing sulfur and smoke and snarling with demonic hatred. Oh, God said blah, blah, blah. God's stupid. Don't do. Right? You get the idea, all right? Because the devil knows if he just assaults us with this head-on shock and awe attack, it's going to expose him, right? He's going to blow his cover, and it's not going to work. And so he works the exact opposite angle. He works in quiet, calculated whispers to plant subtle doubt between your ears. Listen to this. The devil doesn't shove. He just nudges a little bit. Did God really say? So there's a great scene from a not-so-great movie, Broadcast News, 1980s film. Albert Brooks played one of the main characters, and he imagines in this scene what the devil would look like today if he appears, if he were to show up. And this is what he says. What do you think the devil is going to look like if he's around? Nobody is going to be taken in by a guy with a long, red, pointy tail. No, the devil will be attractive. He'll be nice and helpful, and he'll get a job where he influences a great God-fearing nation. He'll never do an evil thing. He'll never deliberately hurt a living thing. He will just bit by little bit lower our standards where they're important, just a little tiny bit, and just coax along flesh over substance, just a tiny bit. That's pretty good theology from a pretty lousy source, right? The devil isn't going to come at you in blatant frontal assault wearing a devil costume. Rather, he's going to quietly sneak up on you and just thought by subtle thought, speaking soft, reasonable, and appealing lilts. I wonder, did God really say? I'm having trouble bringing it up. I can't really remember. It's all just a little bit confusing. I mean, how could we ever understand what God really meant anyway? You see how that works? The devil doesn't frighten, he feeds. He feeds. And consider this. I love this part of this story. So when the serpent speaks to Eve in the Garden of Eden, he asks her a question, and she answers the question. Instead of saying, "Eek, a snake," right? And it's talking. Think about that. What's with that? All right. Listen, it kind of makes you wonder how quickly a strange voice can sound normal. You need to hear that again. Snake talk. It's amazing how quickly a strange voice can begin to sound normal. This is how the devil works. He works to plant question marks in your head about the things God says, and he does it in such a subtle way as to get you thinking that you're just thinking thoughts. He's whispering snake talk in your ear, and he's doing it so subtly that you just think you're thinking. Make sense? Yeah. That's the first how of the devil's familiar evil game plan. It's not loud in your face deception. It's just very quiet, subtle doubt. And the second how of the devil's familiar game plan is this: twisted truth. And so in answer to the Eve's question, we see that not only had subtle doubt kind of gotten in her head, but the truth got twisted all around in her head. And in verses 2 and 3, this is her answer. Of course we may eat from the fruit in the trees in the garden. It's only the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden that we're not allowed to eat. So far, so good. She is saying what God said. Because she goes on to say, but God said you must not eat it or even touch it, because if you do, you will die. And if you go back, that's not really quite what God said. It's close, but it's subtly twisted around a bit, with the result that the first man and woman got in their heads that the way it is not really the way God said it is. All right? Twisted truth had already found a mark between their ears. And there was a bulge in the defensive line, and there are about to be the first casualties in the invisible war in the human race. That's the devil's same game plan against you today. All right, he's not going to come at you with this flat out, contradict God's truth in your head. He's just going to tweak it a little bit. Sprinkle in a little bit of doubt and tweak it a little bit more. And so what I want to do is just unpack some of the textbook psychological suggestion, serpent talks that you will find yourself on the receiving end of. So here's psychological operation number 1. All right. Did God really say there's something you can't do? Did God speak prohibition. I mean, that doesn't sound like God to me. He's loving. How could a loving God not approve anything that you would want to do, his child would want to do with your life? I mean, doesn't God love you no matter what you do? Does that sound familiar? Yeah, it's snake talk. It's snake talk. It sounds right, but it's just a little bit twisted. Here's psyops number 2. Devil says, did God really say, did he really say that he'd forgive you if you screw up? It doesn't make sense to me, sweetheart. He is, after all, he's perfect, he's righteous, and he's just. And let's face it, when you screw up, you're not even happy with yourself. I can't imagine a perfect God being happy with you. Would he really want to call you his child after what you did? It's hard to imagine, sweetheart, right? And we find ourselves saying, no, I really can't imagine that God would call a loser like me his child. No, I can't imagine that he would either, right? See how that works? Doesn't it sound kind of right? Doesn't it sound kind of familiar? Yeah. Snake talk. It's snake talk. Psyops number 3. God is so good. Isn't he, sweetheart? God is so good. Kind of makes you wonder why so much stinky stuff happens to you. Right? I mean, kind of makes me wonder if God is sometimes not as good to you as he is to like everybody else. Right? We fight it. No, God is always good. It's just that, I don't know, he's got to do bad stuff to me sometimes, I guess, to teach me a lesson. Now, that's an interesting thought. I kind of like that. I see what you're doing there. That actually sounds right to me. That sound familiar? Yeah, that's snake talk. What? That's snake talk. And here's one more. Psychological ops number 4. Devil's like, did you ever notice that so-and-so kind of looks at you a little bit funny sometimes? Kind of makes you wonder if he's judging you. Right? Don't it? Ever heard that one? They're looking at you funny. Why? Right? Snake talk. We call that the side-eye, side-swipe lie. Side-eye, side-swipe lie. All right. Anyway, the enemy's attack strategy is just to plant a twisted truth, just this little inception between your ears. Is the way it is really the way it is? It doesn't seem to me that it is. All right, well, anyway, so how do we counter then? This is the most important part. How do we counter the enemy's age-old tactic of, his tactic of suggesting subtle doubts and twisted truths between our ears? Well, Scripture gives us a clear battle plan in 2 Corinthians 10 that we looked at earlier. So we tear down arguments, and we tear down every arrogant obstacle that is raised up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to make it obey Christ. And so the weapon that defeats the devil's subtle doubt and twisted truth is knowledge of God. Say knowledge of God. Right? It's God knowing. It's knowing God. It's knowing who He is. It's knowing what He thinks. It's knowing what He says. It's knowing what He does and believing Him. And believing what He says is the way it is. Trusting that things are the way He says they are. We counter every subtle, arrogant doubt. We counter and confront every twisted truth that's raised up against God knowledge. And we subjugate it, we subdue it, and we bring it into submitted alliance with Christ by just knowing who the Father is and trusting what he says. Make sense? Okay. And this is where we'll wrap up, this is exactly the way that Jesus battled the devil himself when the devil tried pulling out his playbook against Jesus. In Luke 4, the devil comes at Jesus with these same tactics. Verse 3, so the devil says to Jesus, he starts with subtle doubt. If y'all really are the Son of God, I'm not sure, are you the Son of God? If y'all, right? Subtle doubt about your identity. We'll talk more about that next week. And Jesus answers, no. The scriptures say, here's the truth. Here's God knowledge. And again in verse 5, the devil says, if, ... and he plants some sort of subtle doubt. Jesus replies, no, the scriptures say. And again in verse 9, the devil says, if... And you know what he does here? He twists scripture. And Jesus answers, no. The scriptures actually say this. All right? So the devil even came at Jesus with his age-old playbook. All right? Suggest subtle doubts, try to plant those between Jesus' ears. But Jesus stood his ground, the same way that we stand our ground on what the Father said. What the Father said in his word. And even the devil will twist scripture. He twisted scripture at Jesus, right? Devil knows the Bible. He knows his Bible. Probably better than most of us know our Bible. And he's going to twist it. Going to mess it up just a little bit. And he tried it on Jesus. He twisted scripture. So it's the same offensive attack, the same counteroffensive. Jesus anchored himself in what the Father had already said and trusting that what the Father said about how things are is how things are. Right? He tore down every lie that the devil was trying to raise up against God knowledge, knowledge of the Father. And that's where we'll pick up next week.